All right, perfect. I will go ahead and turn things over to Mallory. She and I will kind of take turns going through some of this information for you. But again, thank you for being with us, and I will turn it over to Mallory.
Thank you, Jenny. Just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay, right? Thumbs up, good, okay, sweet. I do want to apologize in advance because just like you guys, I am at a school right now. So you can bet that somebody might barge in, or, you know, a bell might ring, or the announcements might go off. So I apologize if that does happen during our recording. I'm excited to be here with you guys, and I'm excited to be able to talk about some of the things that I was able to do for the students within my school district, as well as just for the profession itself within our district. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. I saw one of my college and career teammates is on the call, so she'll know some of the things that need to be worked on as well. We definitely don't have it figured out entirely, but we do have some parts of it at least moved in the direction of where we want to go. So today we're going to talk about a few things. Jenny's going to talk about the history of the funding from the legislature. I'm going to talk about how to advocate to be able to access some of that funds, and then also just to advocate for your profession in general, how to get started kind of in the realm of seeking funding. And then I'm also going to talk about some best practices, and we'll open some time up for questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Mallory. So like Mallory said, I wanted to provide a little history of kind of where this college and career advising funding came from. When did it start? For those of you who have maybe been in this field for a while, you'll remember that even a decade ago, this funding did not exist, and only certain schools with a lot of resources had college and career advisors or college and career counselors. And so we thought it would be helpful to kind of go through the history of when that started. And then we'll also talk a little bit about what the statute actually says. So what does the legislation say, and what are some of the allowable costs that you can use the money for? So we'll start with kind of just a history. So I wanted to do just a quick timeline. So it was in 2015 when the legislature actually created the college and career advising program. However, when that program was created, it was not funded. So for the first year, it existed, but there was no money to help support it. It wasn't until 2016 when the legislature was able to allocate $5 million toward funding the college and career advising program. And then since 2017, the college and career advising program has received $9 million a year to support those efforts. So we really have not seen an increase in funding for this program since 2017. And so that's something to just kind of be aware of, as you know, as Mallory talked about advocating and things like that. So when you think about it, 9 million does seem like a lot of money, but we also have a lot of districts in this state. And so of course, 9 million doesn't go as far as we'd like it to when we think about all the things that we would like to accomplish in college and career. So that's just a quick little timeline. And then I wanted to explain sort of how the funding is allocated. So it's really broken down in terms of school size. So we know that Idaho is, it's a very diverse state in terms of size of districts and sizes of schools. We have large districts, especially here in the Treasure Valley and some of our other more urban areas. And then we have some really tiny little districts because we're a very rural state. So it's kind of broken down in terms of how many students are enrolled in grades 8 through 12. So you can see on the slide that for schools with 100 or more students enrolled in grades 8 through 12, it's either $67 per student, and that's per student in grade 8 through 12, or $18,000 that they get, whichever is greater. So again, you know, when we have your big Coeur d'Alene districts, your West Ada districts, Boise school districts, lots and lots of students in grades 8 through 12 at $67 a student. And then for your districts that have fewer than 100 students enrolled in grades 8 through 12, it's $180 per student in those grades, or $9,000 total, whichever is greater. So you can see how some districts end up getting a lot of money for college and career advising, and others, unfortunately, don't get as much, right? And so that's one of the challenges I think that we hear a lot, you know, just from smaller districts, that it's harder to maybe do as much with that money. But I wanted to at least let you know how that funding is broken down. And then I also wanted to share with you the statute. So this is the actual legislation that talks about college and career advising. This is what was passed in 2015 and has remained in legislation. So I'm going to actually put the link to this statute in the chat so that you can also look at it. Get that in there real quick. And then I'll pull it up for us to see as well. So this is an Idaho statute. It's Title 33 in Chapter 12, and you can see it's specific to college and career advisors and student mentors. It's actually a pretty small piece of legislation, pretty easy to read, but also because there's not a lot of information here, it can also feel kind of vague. And sometimes that's hard because you don't know, so what can I use the money for? And so wanted to just share kind of the intent of this legislation is to have districts and schools provide things that would be extra. So it's not meant to replace something that already exists. It's supposed to provide something extra. So for instance, that's how a lot of those districts who got a lot of money were able to add college and career advisors or college and career counselors, because those didn't exist before. And so this money was adding that to the district. And you can see here in the statute that districts can employ non-certified staff to serve in the role of college and career advisors and student mentors. And again, this is just because of the funding differences that many districts would not be able to hire and pay for a certified staff. And so it's written in that districts can employ classified staff to serve as college and career advisors, and many of our districts do. The other thing that's in the statute that you might find interesting and that we always like to point out is that number 3 that says that school districts and charter schools shall provide professional development in the area of college and career advising to all staff serving in the role of student mentors or advisors. All individuals providing service in the role of college and career advisor must have a basic level of training or experience in the area of advising or mentoring to provide such services. And that's something that, again, because it's written into the statute, it's something that really, hopefully you're all receiving some form of professional development to help you serve your students and to help give you a basic knowledge of college and career advising, which is a huge task. And so that is something that the funding can be used for, right? For conferences and workshops and things like that. Some other things that people have asked, is it okay if we use the funding for this or for that? If it's, again, you have to go back to, is it something extra? So if in the district's budget, there's no money for transportation for taking students on college visits, that would be something extra, and that money could be used then to provide busing to take students on field trips to visit colleges. It could also be used for stipends. Let's say that college and career staff wanted to do a summer melt program over the summer, and employ someone to work 1 day a week over the summer to make sure students don't slip through the cracks and actually enroll. A stipend could be used to supplement that person's salary. Or let's say it is a classified position, and that classified position, starts on September 1st, but it would be beneficial for that college and career advisor to show up for a few days in August during registration to assist with seniors and college planning. Maybe a stipend could be given to that person to work those extra days outside of their contract. So we just wanted to give you some ideas. That is certainly not all inclusive. If you have questions about what the money can be used for, please reach out to me. That is one of my main roles here at the state board, is to help advise on what college and career funding can be used for. And Mallory's really going to go into detail about that, but I just wanted to kind of set that stage.
We had a question. Is the funding only available for public school districts and charter schools?
Correct. Yes, that is the case.
Another excellent question. Jennifer asked, what happens to the funds if they don't get used by the end of the year? I will take that one if that's okay with you, Jenny.
Yes, please.
It doesn't go back to the state board. So the district determines what happens with that funding. So in some years in our district, carryover funds have been seen as specifically carryover. So we've been able to access that the next year. And so a school who didn't use all of their funds would get the funds back to them. But what our finance department decided in our district is that anything that doesn't get used goes back into the district pool and then gets reallocated for the next year. So the money doesn't go somewhere else. It's not like it's taken back from the schools and then divvied up to a different opportunity or different, budget, but it is brought back into the district level pot, and then it is reallocated. So every school starts out with the same amount every year at our level.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that, the legislation does require districts to spend it in the year that it's appropriated. However, if they wanted to carry it over for a special project or for something happening in the summer, that could be allowed. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question, but thank you, Mallory. All right.
One other question was, do you have to apply for the funding, or is it just automatically given to the district?
Oh, great question. It is automatically given to every public district in Idaho, as well as public charter schools. So automatically given, you do not have to apply. Great question.
All right, thank you guys for answering the poll. That is really what I had anticipated the responses would be based off of conversations that I've had with college and career advisors and counselors across the state, is that most of us are not involved in this at all. And that used to be the case for me as well. So when this funding was first brought out and there was discussion about potentially hiring a college and career advisor, I actually worked at the school that I am currently working in as a librarian just because I needed a job. And I had been there for a year. Prior to that, I was in admissions at Boise State. And I had heard that this job was opening up, and I felt like I'd be good at it. And so I kind of went out on a limb and I created a plan for how I would approach college and career advising at Skyview High School. And I turned it into my principal. And I said, I think if you took a leap of faith on me, that I could do it. And he opened me up for an interview, and I was able to receive that position. At the time, it was a classified position because I did not yet have my master's in school counseling. With the intent being that once I finished my master's degree, I would become certified. Lots of other things happened between now and then. And I went from having absolutely no clue what the budget was, how much money was being given to the schools, the district, how the district was planning to use it, what our college and career advising plan as a district was and how we were supposed to execute that, to being the person who oversees the college and career budget for the entire school district. So now if a principal wants to access that funding, they actually have to get approval from me before they do have access to those funds. We had some things going on where we had some principals and schools that had purchased like furniture and things that were not exactly college and career appropriate. But once we had kind of had more conversations and I became more involved, we were able to reallocate those fundings so that the college and career advisors at the schools, each of the schools in Nampa School District, actually have their own budget. This year, it kind of varies based off of our enrollment, as you saw, right? As to how much each school can get. We do pay for our employees. So each comprehensive high school has one college and career advisor. And then I am a college and career counselor, and I am at the district level as well as part-time at high school. So we do pay salaries out of that budget. And then in addition to that, with some of the additional funds that we have, we give each of the comprehensive high schools $15,000 that they can then create a college and career budget for their school and students. They turn those budgets into me. Once those are approved, those schools get the funding released to them and they are able to spend it in the ways that they have submitted. Additionally, our middle schools, because you saw that it is grades 8 through 12, right? So 8 through 12, so we want 8th graders doing this work as well. So in our district, the comprehensive middle schools get $4,000 this year as part of their budget. And then the counselors get a stipend to do the college and career work. So that's kind of how it has worked out in our district. Basically, that is kind of what I'm hoping I can help you guys with. To empower counselors and advisors to feel comfortable asking these questions like, where does this funding go? How much of it is spent on salary? How much is left after salaries are paid? How can I potentially access those funds? So with that said, this is kind of the game plan that I would recommend you guys follow. Would be first to set up a meeting with your leadership. I would say start with a building administrator, but know that you may need to go higher than that. Your building administrator is really your advocate, right? So I have just a really good relationship with my principal and I'm incredibly lucky. I know that that is not the case in every school or building or district, but my principal has a really good open door policy. And if I have a question, I feel comfortable going to him. But I would say set up a meeting, send an email, get started at the building level with your administrator that oversees the counseling role in your school. And then gather some data. It's really valuable to be able to say, here are best practices across the state and country, and here's why we should be doing this. Also, you can use this data to help them understand the needs within your building. So when I first started at Skyview High School, my very, very first year, I started with a survey. That was the first thing I did. I sent a survey to all parents and all students. And I said, here are some things. What do you know about these things? What do you need help with? What can I do to help you? And based off of those responses, that's how I planned to use my time. So, you know, a lot of the responses said that they had no idea what advanced opportunities was and they wanted to learn more about that. They also didn't know how to find financial aid. What is FAFSA? Should I be scared of FAFSA? What if I don't want to go to college? Those kinds of things. And so I was able to use the data from that needs survey to say, here's what I want to spend my time on here at Skyview. Anecdotes are amazing because people care about other people, and most building administrators used to be teachers, right? So they got into this profession because they care about kids. So if you can tell them something about kids in their building, that will resonate strongly with them. But oftentimes data can speak to a larger problem or issue within your building or district if you have the numbers to back it up. There are a couple of different places you can find some data. You can use, of course, the Counselor Suite. You can use FAFSA Web. You can use NCAN, the National College Attainment Network. They have a ton of really good FAFSA data out there, as well as post-secondary data. And that can be extremely helpful. The National Student Clearinghouse. You can do research through the American School Counselor Association, finding out what is kind of an expected rate for post-secondary attainment. As well as what would be recommended for school counselors to be doing. There's lots of data out there. I remember in my master's program that there was a whole class just dedicated to data. And when I started that class, I thought it was going to be the worst because that sounded like math to me. But I've actually grown to become just incredibly fascinated by it and to use it to benefit me. So I did a data poll once where I compared our PSAT scores, found students who had scored at or above the college readiness benchmark who were failing that subject. So for example, that was students who maybe were at or above benchmark in English, but were currently at a D or below in their English class, telling us, yeah, Natalie, don't worry about it. This is all going to be recorded, and then Jenny's going to send a follow-up. So please don't stress about writing all of this down. But that data was really valuable because then I was able to bring it to my administrator and say, hey, we have a problem. These students know the content, but something's happening in the classroom. And then I was able to actually start a counseling group based off of that. After you gather your data, I would recommend just creating your wish list. Start big, right? You can pare down later. But remember, the worst they can say is no. And then, okay, pick yourself up off the floor and try again another year. Try to find the best possible scenario for your students. The best outcome would be X. And ask for that. If they say no, thank you, then you can pare down and find something else that might still be beneficial. Most of the time, admin want to help students. So if it's something that will benefit students, even if they can't afford it at that time, they usually won't just give you a flat out no. They'll say maybe not right now. Let's talk about it, how we can make a plan for the future. And then assemble your team of advocates. When I was trying to decide exactly what I wanted that bullet point to say, I was like, what can I picture? What team can I picture? And of course, the biggest team in our cinematic universe, the Avengers, was what came to my mind. So that is why I said that we should assemble our team. So we should assemble your Avengers and your advocates to be on your team, because while it might feel like you are all alone, you absolutely are not. Like we said, this funding was given to all public districts and public charter schools. So there are lots of us out here doing the work, as well as the state board offering assistance and guidance to help you. So don't think that you are going to need to do this by yourself. Run your ideas off of somebody else. Have a list of people who you feel comfortable asking your questions to. But in addition to that, find your advocates within your building. Ideally, your principal is one of them, but if that for some reason is not the case, I bet you there are teachers in your building who want to help students as well within college and career readiness, who might be willing to join a college and career team that maybe could meet after school and you guys could work together to tackle some of these bigger issues. Or it might be that you have a community member or someone from TRIO who can help you out. Sometimes our higher education institutions are willing to be your advocate as well. All right, so when you do start approaching your administration, a few things to just keep in mind. Always remember to focus on student needs. Like I said earlier, your administrator cares about kids and they want everything to come back to students. So if you keep coming to them saying, I want this, I need this is for my career center, this is something that I need in my budget, I need this stipend, while the stipend's probably worthy and you do deserve it, make sure you tie it back to student need. And then try to establish a relationship of trust. I actually asked my principal when I was creating this presentation just for some insight on things that he prefers or does not prefer when counselors or advisors come to him with problems. And he said, of course, he has an open door policy and anyone can come to him with anything, but one of the things he doesn't appreciate is being surprised. So try not to just say, hey, I want to meet with you, and then come into the office and say, I'm requesting $10,000 for this. That's kind of a big ask. Instead, prep it a little bit, establish that rapport with your administrator in other ways as well by continually being a reliable and strong employee who can adapt and change and is willing to work hard for student needs, so that he can see that you are somebody who they could rely on and who is worthy of that trust, so that when you do have a big ask, he's willing to jump through those hoops. And then express gratitude. They're very busy people, right? So I don't want to be an admin. That sounds terrible to me. Partly because I don't ever want to just be on call all of the time, which is really what they are. If there's a student emergency that happens outside of school hours, they're still answering that cell phone for the most part. So please acknowledge the hard work that they are doing, and maybe even acknowledge some of the things and changes, positive things you've seen in your building that year, so that they know that you understand the hard work that they are putting in. And then be prepared. I would not recommend just like coming into their office and saying, hey, I want to talk to you about a budget. And then not knowing what you're asking for and not knowing the data behind it. Just say, hey, this one lady did this presentation, that I attended, and she said I should have a budget. So can you give me that, please? It's not going to work super well because they might ask you some hard questions and you won't be able to answer them. Additionally, make sure that you have identified what your values for this work are and that you stay true to them no matter what. So stick to your integrity when it comes to your student needs and student focus, even if it's hard, right? So you'll always have to pick between what is right and what is easy. And unfortunately, asking for money is not an easy thing. So I would maybe even consider researching some negotiation techniques if you're not a person who is comfortable with confrontation, especially. A couple of places where I found a lot of inspiration and assistance are the book Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, and then the textbook Crucial Conversations. I didn't put the author because there's like 7 of them, but that is a really helpful place to start if you're not sure how to approach this type of a conversation. It can be unpleasant and difficult to be a squeaky wheel, but in the long run, oftentimes people will respect you for that because what you're doing is advocating for your students. And then these are just some sample budget items that I have used in the past. I was thinking about things that I had to advocate for, things that didn't already exist, but I felt were necessary to have in our school for our students. One of them being welcome bags. So I remember being a new student to a large high school, and it's extremely intimidating. And so one of the ways I wanted to make sure that every new student to the school knows about the Career Center and knows that there are people on campus who recognize the struggle of being new is through a welcome bag. So whenever we have a new student, the registrar lets our Career Center know, and we have a pre-made little like gift bag for those students that has a welcome card from the Career Center, contact information. It has, a fast forward form. It has a trio paperwork, has some pens and pencils, some encouraging quotes and stickers, and then just a couple of like little snacks that just says, welcome to Skyview. We know it's hard to be new. We're on your team. As you might imagine, that doesn't come cheap, right? Because we are a pretty transient population in our area. So we have a lot of move-ins and move-outs. But I felt like it was worthy of creating a culture of, inclusion and welcomeness. So that is one thing that I did have to work a little bit for, and I actually had to partner with Trio to fund the rest of what I was unable to pay for the first year I got it started. We also host an SAT crash course. This one was a little bit difficult because I wanted to have experts teaching this, right? Sometimes people assume that because we are in the college and career realm, we are experts in the SAT and the ACT. And while SAT coordinating is so much fun, and I feel I am an expert in the coordinating, I am not an expert on the test. So I wanted to have an English teacher and a math teacher going over the English and math sections and taking questions regarding the SAT for juniors prior to test day. Granted, that's going to take some time, so we couldn't do that during the regular school day. So we selected a Saturday, and I didn't want those teachers to feel like they had to volunteer either. So we actually pay those teachers for their time on those days to help prepare our students for the SAT, and we do not have any cost for the student. When I first brought this idea forward, I was met with a little bit of it was a little bit of a wall at first, saying, well, you just need to charge the students who want to attend. And in our population of our district, that simply isn't an option. About 40% of our population are on free and reduced lunch, and those students would not be able to pay even a $20 fee to participate in this, and I wouldn't want them to feel that they needed to in order to be included in something as important as that. Of course, we have a big FAFSA competition, and FAFSA completion goals, we this year started some new things. So this year I worked with Idaho Central Credit Union to empower my senior mentor teachers to care a little bit more about the FAFSA. So I told our senior mentor teachers that by Christmas break, the senior mentor class that has the highest percentage of FAFSA completion, that teacher would get to go in the Idaho Central Credit Union money machine. I was actually able to use funds from our college and career budget to pay for that money machine. So the cash that went in there came from our college and career budget. We had 2 teachers who tied. They went in, one of them caught about $45, the other one, not so great, she caught like 11. But the teacher who caught about 40 actually gave $1 from his winnings to each of the students who had completed their FAFSA when he went back to class the next day. It was actually pretty fun. And then all the other teachers were really pretty competitive. They were egging each other on. And at this point in the year, Skyview's FAFSA completion is actually higher than it has ever been at this point so far. So I was pretty happy about that. Jenny talked a little bit about professional development. You should all be getting professional development. I'm glad you guys are here because this is one option. But this is just 1 hour about one very specific thing. If I did not have the professional development that I've had the opportunity to participate in, I don't think I would be anywhere near where I'm at. I've had the opportunity to attend multiple conferences and receive a high level professional development. And unfortunately, those things don't come cheap. Some examples that I have attended would be the American School Counselor Association conference, the National College Attainment Network, which I went to this last year for the first time. I'm actually a Gates Fellow with NCAN, so I was able to do that on NCAN's penny that I would have been able to with college and career funds if that were something that I had in my back pocket already and put into the budget. That is a more expensive one, but now that I have attended that conference, I would recommend anyone who has the ability to do that. It is a very high level professional development, one of the best I've ever participated in. The National Career Development Association, and then me and some of my team from the school district are actually attending Preparate in April, hosted by the College Board. The focus of that is on Latinx achievement in education. So that's a pretty good professional development as well. In years past, it's been even better. We had a bit of a strange scenario when we had COVID, but now that we're coming out of that, I think it'll probably be a high quality event again. And then lastly, just try to think about the things you're already doing and how you can make them even more effective. So often we have FAFSA nights, we all participate in the college application month, and we do dual credit and advanced opportunities. Just try higher ed day, see what you can do to take it to that next level and get students even more excited about it. Because if the student thinks that the event is fun, they are more likely to remember what they did during that time and be engaged in it. So we try to treat college application week like it's a party. We have lots of prizes. We have lots of things going on all week. Ideally, we have things going on in other grade levels as well. And then we post pictures of the students as they take their as they complete their checklist, and we hang them up in the hallway so other grade levels can see them and see how proud we are of the students who applied that week. I think that when you enhance events like that so that the student has a higher stake, you really will see the outcome be higher. One of my all-time favorite emails that I received was from a student right after college application week that just said, "Thank you, Mrs. Essman, for making something that started out really stressful be really fun." This is just the template that we use when we are creating our budget items. So this is what I turn into, well, what each of the schools turn into me to get approved before we turn it into finance at our district to have the funding released. So this helps the district understand that the funding that you're going to be using is not going to be for purposes other than college and career, and that it is student focused. So under supplies and equipment, that's where I would put the items that I needed, for example, like my welcome bags, maybe some calculators for the SAT and the PSAT, some number 2 pencils, some folders. I have actually purchased folders for my the last couple of years, I've ordered about 400 folders a year so that when a senior or a student comes in to do an advising appointment, I can create a folder for them with like a copy of their unofficial transcript, their academic advising plan, some scholarships, and then a next steps checklist. And then I tell the students, keep this folder. You can use this folder as your college folder so that all of your important paperwork can stay here. When you have a password for advanced opportunities or for College Board, or anything related to that, I recommend writing it down and putting it in this folder so it's easy for you to find for the next year. And just that has been a really valuable tool for me as well. Transportation, that would be like for field trips. We do a lot of work with CLEP, as I know many of you guys in other districts do as well, especially around the Spanish language CLEP exam. And we take the students to Boise State. We pay for the bus. CWI typically pays for the like food on campus. But this last year when we took our students for the CLEP exam, because Boise State is so close to the zoo, we were on our tour and some of our students saw the giraffes from the river and they were so excited. And we asked, how many of you have ever been to the zoo? And only one student out of my group raised their hand. So this year, after their CLEP exam, we are actually going to take those students as a celebration for the hard work that they did and for studying for their CLEP exam. We're going to take them to the zoo after. And we're going to use our funds from College and Career to do that. Some things, for example, like the other costs, that would be like marketing materials. So when you have a large event, it's important to make sure that students know what's going on, as well as parents. And if you have a catchy and professional poster or invite, that really makes a big difference. And then of course, professional development and training. So these are just some considerations to think about when you're trying to figure out how much something costs. This transportation cost, I believe, is actually from last year from Brown Bus, so it might be a little bit different with the increase in gas prices. So it might be a little bit higher. But last year it was $33.96 per hour plus 77 cents per mile. So that can help you kind of calculate how much it would cost for you to have a bus. If it's, you know, within a 30 to 40 mile radius, I usually just earmarked about $250 for transportation costs. And then if you are planning to have a students off campus during their lunch time, you either need to plan ahead and have the students pack a lunch, which can save on costs. I really like to have my students feel like VIPs when we go on college tours and make them feel like they are important, and we're so happy that they are there. Again, I also sometimes am concerned about whether or not the students will be able to afford to purchase their own food, so I will try to provide food whenever I can. And just kind of an example, it's about $10 per student at BSU for meals, and that can range depending on what you want to get. Of course, one of the cheapest options is to just order a pizza, but depending on where you are, sometimes they won't let you do that. Entrance fees, again, this depends on where you're going. Most college visits don't have an entrance fee. However, like I said, my example for our Spanish language CLEP exam, we are going to take those students to the zoo afterward. And that will have an entrance fee for each of our students, and we will be using College and Career funding to pay for that. Additionally, I do a college and career access group. We just started for this year with 10th graders, mostly first generation students. And we meet about 8 times throughout the second semester to discuss college and career related topics and, you know, fears and barriers and how we can overcome them. And at the end of the semester, we take them on a celebration field trip. Years past, we've done a few different things. Sometimes it's nice and easy to just go to NNU because we're so close to Nampa. So we'll go to NNU and then we'll reserve their like gym location, and we'll just kind of have like a party and buy some pizza and you know, again, treat them like VIPs. But we've also discussed other options like going bowling. If there is like a relevant movie out, we would take them to go to the movies, something that is fun, gets them off campus, and again, gives them that VIP treatment. And then we all do college fairs and career fairs, and it doesn't cost us anything typically to just host someone, right? The things that might cost money are, again, marketing materials, prizes to incentivize students to be engaged, thank yous for community members who did participate. I try to feed my community members if they are there over a lunch break, so that they're willing to come back in future years. So they'll remember, oh, right, those people in Nampa School District, they were really nice to us. I'll totally go back there. And then, as we probably know, if you have been in this field, that sometimes a college fair or a career fair itself isn't always as successful as we want it to be, because the students don't always engage with our vendors. So we usually have an activity sheet of some sort that the students have to complete. So what I've done in the past is done like a bingo. So if they get, 4 in a row, or if they get all of the bingo squares completed, they get prizes. So some examples of things they might have to do would be like, you have to talk to somebody who had a work study while in college and ask them how they found their work study. Or find somebody who had to have a certification for their job, ask them what their certification was. Find somebody who had a job while in college, ask them for advice on time management. And then this is just kind of a sample email to kind of get you guys started for how you might approach your administrator. I tried to have this be really a very generic and upbeat email to help them kind of identify what you want to talk about, but also knowing that this is going to be the jumping off point, right? So this is getting started. You will not be asking for money in this first email, right? You will be telling them that you want to discuss some ideas that you have, and then discuss what those costs might be and how we might be able to fundraise or find ways to pay for them. So it just kind of starts off with, I hope you have your new year is off to a great start. Want to reach out about some cool activities and student services going on in the state of Idaho. We'd love to be able to replicate these. And then maybe here is a proposal or a list of things I would like to try here at our school. Give them multiple options to pick from for when you want to meet with them, because again, your principal is busy. Thank them for all that they have done and for their continued support for you and for the college and career efforts at that school. And then kind of close out. It might be a good idea in this meeting to say, I would be interested in maybe setting up a monthly appointment with you to continue to work on these items as well as others, and discuss college and career efforts and pursuits within our school. That way, again, that can help you create that trust and rapport with your administrators when you do need to advocate for things for your students, you feel comfortable doing so. And then, end of everything, if you still have zero funding, you cannot do things with money from your school or your district, there are other places you can try. I have partnered a lot with our TRIO representatives. We have education talent search in our building, and we've been able to cost share on things. So the first time I created that college access group, I didn't have funding. There were a couple of years in our district where we didn't have access to the budget at all. When I first started, I had no idea how much money we had, what we could or could not do. And so we were trying to find ways to pay for things for the first few years before I got involved to this level, which I did by being the squeaky wheel. But TRIO helped me out a lot. They have been absolute lifesavers. So our college access group was mostly funded by TRIO the first year. The STEM Action Center, they'll often help pay for like field trips and things. You can also set up a time or a call with them. You can fill out grant applications. Their website's pretty good and easy to locate. Workforce Development Council. There's also Cap Ed. They do grants for teachers and educators, as well as, like, if you really need to, you could consider doing like a GoFundMe fundraising event, try and get your parents involved, all sorts of different creative options. If you're told no, that doesn't mean you can't do it necessarily. If it's good for kids, find a way to make it happen. It just means you might have to be creative and you might have to work a little harder to get that funding.
I'm sure many of you, like I did, when I was listening to Mallory's presentation for the first time, I was like, holy cow, Mallory is amazing. And I will just say that I think that, and Mallory will probably confirm this, that she worked a lot with Byron, who was in my role last year, to really get started on this. And so again, if you're thinking about, okay, I want to do what Mallory has done, I want to have a conversation with my principal, I want to be part of the budget conversations, please reach out to me. Let's have those conversations. We can talk about kind of how to approach it, when to approach it. One of the things that you'll want to think about is that most school districts, and I don't know why I said most, all are required by law to have their budget set by July 1st for the upcoming school year. And so now, second semester is a really good time to be thinking about like what you would want to see in that budget. If you wait until the beginning of the school year, the budget's already been set for that year. And so right now is a really good time to be thinking about that. But again, these are things that I'd love to just sort of walk through with you. Same with Mallory, please feel free. You can definitely reach out to Mallory. We understand that every district is different, superintendents are different, principals are different. All of the situations that you all come from are going to be different. And so we just want to provide support where possible. If you have questions about like, can this be funded? Can that be funded? That would probably be best to come to me since it's dealing with like legislative rules. So again, please just reach out to us. And let's see, it looks like we do have a question. Can you include a list of items you normally include in the folder during your advising appointments? Especially interested in seeing your academic advising handout that you mentioned. Yes.
Yeah, the academic advising handout that I was referring to is actually the one the State Department has. That's the one I use, just general education requirements. So when I have students taking dual credit, I always give them a copy of that so they can see what their dual credit class would transfer into as a general education. At the bottom of the advising handout, there's also like a question, and I'll include that in all the information we send out, but that just has some questions for them to consider. So a lot of this, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? There's tons of resources out there. And most of us don't want to reinvent the wheel ourselves. So we've found things in, resources in different areas, or if we have created it, we are more than happy to send it out and share that information. So we'll definitely do that. To echo kind of what Jenny said, one of the things that Byron was really able to do for me when I was first starting was he actually called my principal when he saw things that were going well. So if, I did something that he thought was cool, or like I spoke at a conference once and he sent an email to my principal and said, hey, I saw Mallory Essman, who works at Skyview High School, do this presentation on X date. She did an amazing job. And that's all he said. But that kind of a thing makes principals feel like, oh, I hired the right person. I'm doing a good job, right? Even though it's not a compliment to them, it's a compliment to them, to their staff, right? So that can really do wonders, as well as sometimes he would just call and like leave a voicemail for my admin, just saying, hey, we saw this cool thing that Skyview did. It was in Idaho Ed News. Thought it was great. You're doing a good job, that kind of a thing. Or he'd even come to like my meetings if I invited him. Like I would have a meeting with our assistant superintendent, or I would invite Byron, and he would be able to speak to at the state level. Here are some of the things that are going on across the state and how they are using this fund. So that was a really good resource for me. Or if I had a meeting that I felt didn't go well, I could also just kind of say, hey, this felt yucky to me. What do you think about it? So really know that you are not in this work by yourself. It does feel that way often, but it's not the case. That's the one.
Is this the one? Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to share that we will definitely send this as a PDF out to everyone who attended the webinar today, as well as people who registered. But this I was able to find on the Advanced Opportunities page on the State Department website. But like I said, I'll email it out. So
they have a complementary item that goes with it. That's the dual credit advising phases that kind of, especially if you're new to this role, would be a very helpful document to look at that tells you, okay, when a student is first signing up for a college credit class or is thinking about it, here are some of the things you should talk to them. When they get to that 15 credit mark, here's what you should talk to them. And then when they're like a senior about to graduate, here's what you should talk to them about. Also very helpful.
Thank you all so much for attending. And thank you, Mallory. You're so amazing. We just are so thankful for you and your expertise.
Thanks, guys. I don't know that I'm an expert, but I can be loud sometimes.